Visalia, California. After the young skater Ken Park takes his own life with a smile on his face, the stories of those who knew him unravel experiences of teenage sexuality, a taboo affair, cheating on a girlfriend for her mother, sexual expression, religious oppression, and dysfunctional relationships with abusive fathers and grandparents trying their best, resulting in harassment and resentment which boils into the unspeakable. This is Larry Clark's and Edward Lachman's Ken Park, a film written by Harmony Korine, based on the journals, experiences, and stories of Larry Clark's teenage years, capturing the American slacker impressions of earlier Clark and Korine films, Kids and Gummo. Ken Park garnered a mixed to negative reception that has resulted in affecting the film's potential for distribution. The critical reception Ken Park has received focused much on the film's unpleasant and uncomfortable nature, considering its portrayal of sex and violence as gratuitous for the sake of shock value. However, Ken Park has certainly persevered as a fringe cult film for its openness in portraying youthful sexuality and exploration, the impact of abuse and religion contributing to sexual repression, and presenting these sensitive subjects within a multi-strand, sometimes non-linear narrative that is relatable to teenagers and young adults who share similar experiences with the film's characters. Ken Park's poor critical reception and lack of wide distribution within the US and the UK, as well as its ban in Australia for its prolonged scenes of unsimulated sex, has not impeded its ability to gain a cult following, even developing a collaboration between Larry Clark and bootleg fashion designer / Marc Jacobs collaborator Ava Nere to release a fashion line inspired by and celebrating the infamous film. Ken Park has become loved for all its provocations and personality. A surprising satiric edge tinges some of the film's quieter scenes, such as when, as Sean arrives at his girlfriend's house to sleep with his girlfriend's mother Rhonda, he spots Rhonda's youngest daughter watching bikini-clad women on television, her dolls undressed. An intentional and darkly comic observation regarding the unreasonable beauty and sexual standards pressured onto women and the early influences it has on children. Sexuality is a significant theme in Ken Park, and Ken Park explores it openly without shame as a way to normalize consensual kink play, sexual expression through polyamory, and to remove the stigma placed on victims of sexual abuse. Many of its conversations can be uncomfortable, such as when Sean discusses with Rhonda after sex how she tastes exactly like her daughter, his girlfriend Hannah, but Ken Park is focused on normalizing portrayals of consensual sex, rather than repressing naturally awakened sexual urges, a repression the film depicts unflinchingly, such as the way Peach's father beats her and her boyfriend, almost killing him after catching her performing oral sex, using his dedication to Christianity as his justification for the abusive punishment. The film's clear contrast of the angelic girl next door, a follower of her father's footsteps in religious fundamentalist restriction, a facade for Peach's true sexual colours, dominance and pleasure, is certainly intentional. Her sexual exploration a protest of her father's religious oppression, a challenging of the misogynistic pressure placed on women to be perceived as pure and virgin-like in the eyes of and for the gratification of men. Ken Park's portrayal of an involuntarily celibate young man who is clearly sexually frustrated, Tate, and the portrayal of the bullying and eventual sexual assault that a young man, Claude, suffers from his own father, the drunken resentment clear as day, also extends the film's exploration of the darker side of sex, but equally portrays their trauma and anger with openness and intimacy in the film's attempt to remove the stigma around discussing such sensitive subjects. While Ken Park takes the conclusions of these narrative arcs to the extreme, these characters are treated with sincerity. Ken Park captures effectively an authentic relatability amongst its cast of stoners and misfits, portraying a solidarity and bond amongst characters such as Claude and his stoner buddies, who offer him a place to stay to escape from the pressures of his father, as well as capturing a relatability with the issues the young characters face, such as Ken Park getting his girlfriend pregnant and the uncertainty as to whether they should keep the baby or not, a pressure which is alluded to having an impact on Ken Park beyond his control, resulting in his suicide. For Ken Park himself, a pressure to have sex without taking safety precautions results in a situation he clearly found immensely troubling, a contributing factor which results in him concluding the only way out was to take his own life. Sex is an important aspect of growing up for many, and Larry Clark's film presents Ken Park's own circumstances which are believable, trying to balance a low-paying job with the possibility of being responsible for a child, and portraying such circumstances in a manner that is bound to be reflective of some who choose to watch this film. Ken Park is a film which takes these explorations to excessive extremes, the hardcore sex, the sexual assaults, the suicide, and never plays these extremes for cheap laughs, reinforcing its sense of sincerity towards its characters and people who may share in their troubles and experiences. In conclusion, Larry Clark's and Edward Lachman's Ken Park retains its controversial and negative reputation, its more disturbing and distressing scenes still carrying a weight that many may consider too excessive and gratuitous. However, Ken Park achieves a relatability and authenticity amongst its characters and intends to remove the stigma around sex, from discussing the pleasures of sexuality and hardcore experimentation, from kink play to autoerotic asphyxiation, to openly reflecting on sexual traumas and abuses. Ken Park aims to unveil these subjects in a manner that removes stigmatization, even if the film isn't entirely subtle in its approach. It's worth reflecting on that if Ken Park makes us uncomfortable, it's because we have more that needs to be done in removing stigmatization around the discussion of sex. A special thank you to my super Patreon supporters, Gail, Constantine Bombelli and Victoria.